All right, so now let's dive into the experimental ear candy phase of this indie rock vocal mix that we've been working on. And now we've already delved into reverb and delay. So we've already started that engine of experimentation and trying different things, different effects, etc. But we are going to continue on that train and really try a few extra things just to spice up this vocal mix. Now, I actually started recording a live video like I did with all of the other ones so far in this series, where I am just going at it in a live way and you are getting to see me experiment and try it out. And it's not an after the fact video. Well, this video is actually different because I tried doing it that way the first time where I did it live. But the problem was I ended up spending a bunch of time on this boring ambience track. Not that it's that boring, it's just that, this. And I'm going to show you what I did, but it ended up just being so time consuming and sort of running down a bunch of different rabbit holes that I didn't feel was high quality enough when it comes to giving you guys this content. And so I scrapped that and I was like, okay, I just need to reshoot this. And so I made a list of all the moves I made, and I'm going to walk you through those moves here in this video. So let's actually go ahead and start with that ambience track and show you what I did. So the first thing I did is I isolated the ambience part. Now the ambience part initially was only here, right between here, you and I. So that's the only part of the song where you hear that. Now, I thought it could sound cool, and I thought it might, and I actually do like the way it sounds now, by using that talk track in different places. So even over here at the intro, so when the intro starts, you've got this going, right? Just that nice guitar sound. But then when the drums come in, I thought it sounded cool to add in this little ambience track as well. So have a listen to that. Now, do you notice how it's cutting in and out? And that is because of a plugin I am using here. Now, before we get into that though, let's first come back to the original sound here, where it isn't cutting in and out or anything. And I just want to show you the plugin I'm using. Now, what I did here is I just duplicated the effects that are on the lead vocal to begin with. So that's why these two fat channels just are still on here on this ambience track, just because it's the same settings as was on the lead vocal. So I just left that as is. And then I did automate this plugin, which I'll talk about in a minute. But first, let me show you what I did with the reverb. So I added its own special reverb to just this ambience track. And this is like a 1.5 second chamber type of sound. So here is what it sounds like without that reverb. And then here's with it. So what this reverb does is it kind of puts you at a bit more of a distance between your ears and the people that are talking. So it's almost as if your friends here are talking on the other side of the studio at the far side of the room. You're sitting over on the couch, all the way at the other side, and you hear the reverb more, and there's more of a distance between the conversation happening and you hearing it. So that's the effect that I'm going for. I've got the mix up here at about 65%. So we have the reverb there, right? Now let's come back here to what is going on with that in and out, because here again, you can hear it's just there the whole time. But then here during this intro part, it cuts in and out. Listen. Now, all I did is I pulled in this little stock plugin in Studio One. In Studio One, it's called Extreme. Now, this is basically an arpeggiated gate. It takes the audio and it runs it through, so you can see what's happening here, right? So it just goes on this pattern and just goes through here. Whenever there is not a blue bar present and it's just these black areas here, that's the equivalent of shooting the fader down like that. And that's why you get that in and out, that cutting in and out. So, your DAW probably has a plugin that does something like this. And if it if you don't have a plugin like this, you can always go experiment. You can always use perhaps a plugin like Kickstart, which is a sidechain plugin, but it's that type of thing. You're shooting the audio down, bringing it back, you're dropping it off. Now, of course, if you really don't have any plugin and you just can't find one that works in your DAW, you can always do this manually as well and just automate the volume fader, right? You can just come in here and automate this, right? And just, so you can just do this, right? Just kind of go in and out and then, do it manually like that. And that's completely fine as well. But I did prefer the plugin. It was much faster to get what I wanted. Here, let me turn the auto off and we'll come back here. Okay. So that is the ambience track. There's one more quick thing I'll mention here when it comes to this, and that is I created a second ambience track only because I wanted to add a sidechain compressor. So I wanted this ambience track and these, because again, I added this. This was our original ambience talk track, and I duplicated a part of it over here at the intro, and then I also duplicated a part of it over here, which sounds like this. Now, what we're doing here is I am sidechaining using a compressor, just a stock compressor. I'm sidechaining this ambience track to that lead vocal. So I've just gone ahead and used all the lead vocals, just whatever information comes out of any of the lead vocal tracks, that whenever those are present, it's going to turn down this ambience track. See? And then as soon as it is between the vocal lines, you hear that ambience track come back. So we're just hitting the sidechain button. As you can see, we're connecting it to those vocal tracks. That way it responds to it. And then I just adjusted the attack and release until I found a place that looked good to me. So that is what we are doing when it comes to the ambience tracks. And then also one more at the end here. I think it's a little loud over there, so we turn this down. So that is the ambience track. Now the next thing I did, or one of the things I did in this process of taking this vocal mix to the next level, is I went ahead and just turned down all of the harmony tracks and the background tracks on this mix. They were just cutting through a little bit too much. I wanted the lead vocal to be a bit more front and center. And so that is why you may have noticed that the backgrounds aren't quite as loud. They're still very present. Right? But they are tucked back a bit more, and that just sounded better to me. So that is the move I made there. Just turn down the volume of those. And then the next move is a really, really fun and cool move. And it is a little altar boy effect that I'm bringing in at just a couple tiny little sections of the song. So here's the track, chorus, lead, altar boy. What I did is I simply duplicated the exact audio here, and then I cut away everything except these two little words here. So let me show you what it sounds like so you can hear it, and then we'll talk about it. You and do you hear that? So here is that in solo. The reason I wanted to do this was I just felt like we needed something to give it that extra lift, that extra little bump of energy at this part of the song coming out of this, right? I was just like, I wanted to hear something extra. And that high octave, that pitched up altar boy vocal just sounded great to me. And so now let's walk through those plugins. So as I mentioned, I just duplicated the chorus lead. So the first two plugins here, these two fat channel compressors, are the same. So after that, it's just two plugins we added. Little Altar Boy, it's the main effect that's happening here. So I pitched it up by an octave, plus 12, and then I raised the formant. Now, when I'm going for this type of effect, often I'll have a lower formant. Sometimes it'll be higher formant. It'll just depend, because here is what it sounds like if we mess with this knob here. You and I. It becomes a bit harder to hear there because it's no more this sound versus this sound over here, like this, right? And then a key thing I did here also is I cranked the drive here inside this plugin because without the drive, now part of that's a volume thing too, but it doesn't have enough grit. So then when you crank it, you can really hear it have the effect. And then I'll also, just to make sure that it fits well in the context of this overall mix, I added this EQ to remove some high end because it was cutting through a bit too much in an unpleasant way, and also removed any of these super lows below about 200. So here's without that EQ. Let me actually show you just to kind of give you a feel for it. See, it's almost too bright, almost too present, right? So here's without the EQ. And then here's with that EQ turned on. It just warms it up. We needed it to be more warm and more blanketed so that it doesn't overrun that lead vocal. We wanted this as an energy lift, not as an energy takeover, right? So you and so now, very quickly, let me show you what I did here with the sends. So I'm sending this to, the main effect is the slap delay. So let me solo this again. Let me turn these off and I'll turn, here's without the slap delay. And then here's with the slap delay. And we've already talked about the slap delay in the last video, right? That's this here, it's just the Valhalla delay, and we've already walked through that. I'm just sending it to that exact same slap delay. Now the next delay is I'm sending it to the same delay that we are using a couple times in this song on the vocal, and that is where you get that echo. That's where what you're hearing when you hear this. Or wait, why is it not? Oh, I'm on the wrong here. My bad. This delay. We'll get to this old delay here in a second, so let's just focus on this now. Right? That's how you get the echo. You and I, you and I, you and I. And that is this delay that we've already set this up. We've used this on the lead vocal, and I'm just repurposing it here. And then finally, we are sending this Altar Boy track to that old delay, which sounds like this. Let me crank it so you can really hear it. Just a really cool springing type of delay. Again, we've already talked about this. I ended up using the analog delay, stock delay here in Studio One to get this effect. And we are, again, just repurposing delays that are already in this session. So that is the Altar Boy sound. And what makes this so powerful is that it's not there the whole time, right? It's only there at this specific part. It's not over here. It's not over here. It's only when you're coming out of this. Now, of course, we could turn this down slightly if we wanted to, but we'll get more into that as we wrap up all of the final details in the next video. So that's the Altar Boy track. Now, the next track that I did and that I want to share with you here is this track. So this is, I used a guitar amp plugin to create this type of sound, and it's automated. So you only hear it come in at very specific areas. So I'm gonna go ahead and play and just watch this volume fader here because it's all the way down now, right? So I'm gonna play this and then just watch for it and listen for when this blends in. Coming up here. Do you hear that? Isn't that cool? So we are just doing this number. Just to add interest, to add color, and just to bring you in behind the scenes a little bit here as to my thought process. every section of your song, for the most part, should feel like it has a little something new. It can be the tiniest detail, but it should feel like it moves you to a slightly new place. And at the end of this song here, I felt like when I was listening to it, it's not like I was losing interest necessarily, but it wasn't quite keeping me engaged to the level that I know that it could if I just added a little bit of ear candy, right? And so that is what I did here. Just by automating this, you don't hear it almost anywhere, and then it's just right here.
Now the arrow is gray.
And just like we did with the Altar Boy, I duplicated the lead vocal. So this is the verse lead, the lead vocal track. I duplicated that exact audio. And then I went in here, and again, the two compressors at the top are the same. And then I pulled in the GTR tool rack, and I just browsed through different presets. And this is the sequence strum, something like that here with this GTR3 tool rack from Waves. And yeah, it just sounds really good. It has that distorted experimental effect. And then we also have an EQ just to get rid of some high end and some super low end as well. And yeah, I just went ahead then and sent this through the lead vocals bus as well. Just blended it in with everything else that's going on through the lead vocals bus. And you put it together. It sounds really good. Oh, and one more thing I did is I also automated the pan. So as you hear, here it's on the left side, right?
Now the arrow is gray.
But then over here,
Talking every day.
it's on the right side.
Until 2 a.m. we would stay. Then it was 2 minutes.
So we're doing both volume automation, as you can see here, and then the pan automation to create some left and right interest as well. So that is the essence of what I did when it comes to adding that ear candy and those experimentative type of effects. Now, there are a couple more things I did on this vocal that really just helped elevate it in my estimation. And one of them is I added a distortion to the overall vocals bus. So the lead vocals bus here, so we've got a bunch of tracks running through this: chorus lead, verse lead, both of the ambience tracks, and then that verse lead with the guitar amp on it. And for this, we have the red light distortion. So what I was hearing was the vocal is just doesn't quite have enough grit. I needed to hear more grit, because here's what it was.
When you fell, I crouched down to give you help.
Sounded just a little bit too clean for me, and I wanted a bit of edginess to pull me in, to suck me into the song, right? And so
You were fine. Just a rock that cut you.
let me solo that so you can hear this a little bit better.
I remember when you fell. I crouched down
Now there's with the distortions. I'm going to turn it off for a second here.
to give you help. You were fine. Just a rock that caught you by surprise.
Okay, and now here's with it.
That was the first time I held your small hand.
Now, if we
was
crank
back
it-
to health, you and I felt a vibe. It was time, go inside.
Right, so if we cranked it, it would sound like that. What this is doing is just creating an overall texture that, to me, to my ears, sounds more pleasing. And that is what matters when you're working on your own music: is, does it sound better to you? Does it sound more pleasing? Does it sound more engaging? And for me, that's exactly what this distortion plugin does. And so that's what I ended up going with. And again, it's just runs through the entire song from start to finish. It's not automated or anything. It is just there on this lead vocals bus. So that is what we're doing there to add a heightened level of edginess to it. And then there is a second distortion that I added, but I automated this one this time. So here in Ozone 9, I pulled in my Ozone plugin only for the exciter. So, or I guess no, the EQ too, because when I turned the exciter on, it did add some unpleasant super low end. But anyway, we'll focus mainly on the exciter. So as you can see, it's turned off now because it's bypassed. But let me turn this back on for a second so you can see it here. So here in Ozone, you've got a bunch of different modes and different types of distortions and saturators here. So I just browsed through them and landed on the dual triode that sounded really good to me. But again, the key is we are automating this to come in at certain parts of the song. Now here's the automation lane. This is the Ozone 9 automation lane, and it's not active here, and then I'll show you where it comes in.
You stopped time and started to cry. Why is it going away?
So for that part, I thought it sounded cool to bring in this distortion. Now, before we continue on, let me actually show you a before and after of this distortion. So here's without Ozone 9.
Way, who made it this way? The spark
And then here's with it.
that we work for so hard.
It's subtle again. It's nothing crazy, but it does add that bit of edginess to the periphery of how you perceive that sound. And let me see here. How did I automate this? But then I brought it back up. So again, when this automation lane is up here, it's turned off. So it's off here.
Not the same, let's give it a try for a while. Turn back time.
So it's more of a chill spot, so I left it off. But then here, I turned it on again.
You and I. Not the same,
You know what? I think I need to adjust something a little bit here. I think we are losing a tiny bit of volume. So I'm going to come in here. I think I didn't quite level match this correctly. So I'm going to maybe add a dB here.
You and I. Not the same, I'll take the blame one more time, please don't hide.
Yeah, that's fine. In the next video, to wrap up this mix, we will dive into the volume automation on this lead vocal just to make sure it fits in the pocket where it's supposed to be from start to finish. But there you go. That is the Ozone 9, the automated saturation or distortion, whatever you want to call it. And then again, we turn it off here, that part, and then we turn it on here. Basically, for the more aggressive areas, I wanted more of that saturation because here it's off again. The one exception to that strategy was here, right? When it's that breakdown, but it just sounded good to me to add that extra edge of distortion there. So there you go. One more very, very quick thing, and then we'll wrap up this video and move on to the finalizing of this vocal mix. And that is I simply added a slap delay to these O's tracks over here. So let me see what we got here. These O's coming in over here. Okay. So here's what they sounded like previously. And now here's what they sound like. Just added a bit of slap delay to it. It sounds good.